Thank you, Speaker. Welcome the opportunity to speak on the Energy Legislation Amendment Prioritising Renewable Energy Bill 2026, and I'd like to acknowledge the Minister in the House. Speaker, Coalition is not supporting this bill, and in fact, when I look at the front page of this bill, the overview, its words to prioritise and streamline certain energy infrastructure projects is enough to send the chill down any regional community. The Coalition are opposing this bill because it prioritises process speed over public confidence, centralises ministerial power at the expense of independent oversight, and risks further eroding the social licence that is absolutely essential if the energy transition is to succeed in regional New South Wales. Now, acknowledge that after all, it was the former Coalition government that established the electricity infrastructure roadmap and the legislative framework that underpins the transition occurring today. We recognise the scale of the challenge facing this state, but importantly, we also recognise that long-term success depends on community confidence. That principle appears increasingly absent from this bill. At its core, this bill prioritises projects over people. It prioritises ministerial flexibility over independent oversight. And it risks further eroding trust in regional communities already carrying the burden of hosting this infrastructure, a theme that has been expressed by many regional members across the political spectrum in this House. The government says this bill is about accelerating critical energy infrastructure, but I say that nowhere in this legislation is there a sufficient balance between speed and accountability, and that matters. Because the greatest risk, as I've said, to the renewable rollout is not scrutiny, it is the loss of social licence. No matter how urgent the transition may be, no government can bulldoze its way through regional communities and expect enduring public trust. The government appears increasingly to view scrutiny, consultation and independent oversight as barriers to delivery. But regional communities understand something that this government is missing, that social licence is not an obstacle to the transition, it is a precondition for it. Speaker, it is also worth noting the way this legislation was introduced. The government issued a media release even before briefing on the bill itself. This is a government attempting to wedge debate before consultation has even occurred. Speaker, the bill creates a new priority energy project declaration framework that grants extraordinary powers to the Energy Minister. Under this legislation, the Minister may declare projects to be priority projects, but critically, there is no legislated criteria setting out what constitutes a priority project, what evidence must be considered, what expert advice must be obtained, or how those decisions are to be independently scrutinised. The bill allows the Minister to appoint another person to exercise those declaration powers on the Minister's behalf. I do, Speaker, want to address in the bill in that regard in Schedule 1.1, where it deals with Section 197, that the Minister may declare a particular energy project to be a priority energy project under 1971A, but in 1972 may appoint a person, and then under 1973 that appointed person may only make an order under subsection 2 in accordance with criteria set out in a written order for the declaration of the priority, and that under 1975 this written order is under this section must be published on a website. I just want to raise, Speaker, that it appears that the appointed person will make an order in accordance with criteria set out in a written order, but those criteria don't need to be set out when it deals with the Minister declaring a particular energy project under 1971A. And I'd welcome the Minister clarifying that point. Speaker, it should concern every member of this House. When the Minister may appoint another person to exercise those declaration powers, the government says this would apply to someone such as the Secretary of the Department, but those words are not contained in the legislation itself. There is no meaningful limitation. Speaker, these are not minor administrative decisions. These are decisions capable of influencing billions of dollars of infrastructure investment and fundamentally reshaping regional communities. And that requires accountability, not concentration of power. The bill also removes an important safeguard currently contained within the planning system. Under the existing framework, the Planning Minister must obtain advice from the Independent Planning Commission before fast-tracking major projects. This bill removes that safeguard entirely for priority energy projects. Government justifies this by arguing that the process takes too long. But if timeliness is the issue, then legislate statutory timeframes for the IPC. Do not abolish independent oversight altogether. Because once communities lose confidence that decisions are no longer being independently assessed, trust in the system itself begins to collapse. And regional communities are already telling us that trust is under strain. In my own electorate of Albury, I've seen that with concerns around wind towers on the Yambler Range, one of the most iconic pieces of geography in our community. This is certainly raises significant concern for the community around Girogery, the community of the Greater Hume local government area. It is extraordinary to think that such projects could, away from the independent process, away from a process where community at least has a level of engagement, could see that these could become priority energy projects by a ministerial decree. The concerns of my community are not ideological. People are not opposing cleaner energy, but they're asking for consultation, transparency, accountability, and respect. As I've said previously in this House, it is not a transition for regional New South Wales if it is being done to regional New South Wales, and that remains true today. Unfortunately, this bill risks reinforcing precisely that perception. Speaker, what is particularly striking is that the government's own independent reviews did not recommend these measures. Not one. The O'Reilly Electricity Supply and Reliability Checkup made 54 recommendations. The New South Wales Transmission Planning Review made another 11 recommendations. Neither review recommended removing the Independent Planning Commission's advisory role, concentrating declaration powers in ministerial hands, weakening oversight, or bypassing independent scrutiny. In fact, the independent reviews pointed in precisely the opposite direction. They recommended stronger coordination, greater transparency, improved planning clarity, and better community engagement. Speaker, delays in the system are structural. They're caused by fragmentation, duplication, poor coordination, and inadequate engagement, not by the existence of independent oversight. Speaker, I want to speak to the community benefit sharing arrangements. I welcome that the government seeks to address community benefit. However, in this legislation, rates that have been indicated by government have not been enshrined. They're to be implemented through ministerial direction. That means they can be altered, reduced, or removed without the necessary parliamentary scrutiny. And I believe that regional communities deserve greater certainty than that. If communities are expected to permanently host nationally significant infrastructure, then long-term community benefits should be enduring, transparent, and protected in law. And I fear that the community benefit provisions in this bill are being used as the sugar to help the medicine go down. If the government were genuinely serious about strengthening community benefit mechanisms, it would legislate them properly and transparently in stand-alone legislation, not bundled together in a bill that simultaneously weakens community protections and independent oversight. Speaker, I seek a short extension.
The member is seeking extension of time. Is extension granted? Yes.
I thank the House. Yesterday, Speaker, the member for Wagga and I hosted a roundtable discussion on long-term community benefit arrangements associated with major energy infrastructure projects. We heard from local government representatives, regional joint organisations, the NGO sector, community foundations and developers themselves. A recurring theme throughout the discussion was that community benefit cannot simply be transactional, it must be enduring, locally shaped and aligned with long-term community priorities. Genevieve Jacobs AM posed an important question: how do we define benefit? Sharon Houlihan from the Canberra Regional Joint Organisation spoke about the enormous effort councils are required to undertake in negotiating voluntary planning agreements. And Annabelle Cusson from Community Foundations Australia made the powerful observation that governments need to stop viewing renewable energy purely in terms of megawatt and transmission lines and start viewing it in terms of communities. Speaker, Australian Energy Infrastructure Commissioner Tony Marr recently warned that the challenges associated with the energy transition were more complex and deeper than he had even imagined. He also emphasised that successful transition depends upon communities being respected, engaged and empowered throughout the process. That is the standard we should be striving for. This bill does not meet that standard. The Coalition supports responsible renewable development. We support affordable and reliable energy. We support investment certainty and a cleaner future. But we support independent oversight, transparency, accountability and genuine engagement with regional communities. Those principles are not obstacles to the transition. They are essential to its long-term success. This bill weakens those principles rather than strengthening them, and for that reason, I will not support the bill.